Karen Kabluna didn't learn Inuktitut as a child growing up in Baker Lake, Nunavut. She was raised speaking English. That meant she couldn't understand one of the most important people in her life.
My grandmother only spoke Inuktitut, and I would communicate as much as I could in Inuktitut, and she would communicate as much as she could in English, but it was a long-term goal of mine to have an adult conversation with her.
Now working and living in Iqaluit, Kabluna decided to take a full-time Inuktitut course at Puruvik, a language training school here in Iqaluit. She started just before the pandemic hit and ended up doing some of the coursework online. Full-time Inuktitut immersion. After a year, she's fluent enough to make work presentations in Inuktitut. She's the CEO of Nunavut Tungavik, Nunavut's land claims organization. Even for an Inuit organization, some ideas don't quite translate.
I don't know how to say Comptroller General, so some of my presentation to the board was a little limited. I'm not familiar with a lot of the traditional terminology, but I can certainly get by.
Inuktitut resources in Nunavut are mostly geared towards children. Adults have to deal with that gap and end up having to use course materials designed for children. And that's a lot of see Jane run. For Kabluna, the reward for the hard work was a better sense of who she is.
Learning Inuktitut for me was as much about learning a language as it was about reclaiming my identity. So it was emotionally very intense to present, speaking to adults in general. It's a lot of joy that I can finally do this. It's a lot of intimidation. It's a lot of sadness that I'm an adult before I could do this.
Inuit Language Month continues throughout February, but there's never a bad time to speak Inuktitut in Nunavut. 77% of all Nunavummiut say they can carry on a conversation in Inuktitut. Now Kabluna can too. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.